So let's see where we left off last time. Let me start the server. And we've been working through the last assignment where we're adding AngularJS to a otherwise static set of pages that refer to one another, and we refactored it to use ng-route to implement navigation from one view to the next and adding controllers and services. So let's review that real quick. So I believe this is where we are. Okay, so this is where we are. All under here, an assignment. And I hope the code that I'm putting here is you can reuse this to work on your particular assignments. We've been putting the entry point of the application in index.html. And index.html is declaring this to be the entry point of an application called Web App Maker, which is then implemented in app.js. And app.js is declaring a module, a namespace, where we're going to be putting all the controllers, all the services, all the routing, all the configuration into this one single module, Angular module, which has a single dependency right now. It depends on an ng-route to implement the navigation for a single page application. And we've been slowly refactoring some of the pages that we had implemented in the previous assignment, which used to be hard-coded, standalone HTML pages that refer to one another using hyperlinks. We've been refactoring them to use instead a single page application navigation using ng-route, right? That is based off of using or manipulating the hash sign at the in the URL, as opposed to actually navigating from one page to the next using hyperlinks. We then also in the index page obviously we have some of the styling libraries, Bootstrap, and some of these JavaScript libraries, Angular and routing, and then the configuration of the application that is configuring the navigation between the initial login page, the registration page, and the profile page, right? We worked on also on organizing and structuring the content. Yes. Sure. Yes. Yes. What version are you using? 1.6? Oh, I think the latest is 1.6, but 5.5 is okay. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. We've been organizing our code since as we had been adding more and more pages. It was getting out of hand, right? So we organized it into directory structure. We put all the pages and views and controllers under a user directory. All the ones that dealt with websites or widgets into their own specific directories. And even further, we started splitting controllers and views into their own separate directories. Again, with the intent that as more people, as this grows, as the application grows, and we throw more people working on this to manage the complexity of the application, it's you usually find these kinds of organizations of file systems so that we can divvy up into teams and folks working on different portions of the application. So we also noticed that we're following a naming convention so that the files can be easily placed in the application, or the overall application, so that somebody looks at this and immediately can place themselves of where is this artifact, where does it live, who's responsible for this file, what is the role of this file, and what are the responsibilities of this particular artifact. Using view as the role, meaning this is being consumed by a human being. Client, this is being rendered on the client side as opposed to be rendered on the server side. And then the controllers, also following a naming convention, dot controllers, their responsibility as controllers of intercepting user interaction and their gestures of pointing and clicking and moving the mouse around, fetching data, and then passing the data for the view for rendering. Right? Again, following the architecture of Angular. Right? Angular forces you to think about web applications in those three buckets, right? Models, views, and controllers, which has proven very, very effective on large user interface, heavy user interface applications. I believe did we get to websites and lists? I forget. I guess we didn't. We haven't. For the profile, we did. Okay, we did get to the login. We did get to being able to log in a user using the user service and finding a user by credentials and user service. We implemented it so that it was the single point of encapsulation of all the data manipulation, right? So that we have one single place that we had access to the data in all the ways that we could manipulate that data, right? Whether we want to be able to create it, we'll be able to update it, remove it, or retrieve it in some fashion, following various being able to retrieve the data and finding any number of any number of criteria. In this case, we're trying to find a user by credential, right, or by username, or by any number of finder methods. So you'll find a lot of these finder methods. Finder methods, they all start with find, right? What type of entity are you trying to look for, and typically right after that the criteria by which you're trying to find this, right? What filtering mechanism do you want to use? In this case, by credentials, meaning some username or password mechanism, right? And we implemented it in their own directory of services, right? Where we're hosting the data, and we're providing an API to be able to interact with the data. In this case, we have two finder methods. One that uses the criteria of credentials, username and password. Another one that uses another criteria of finding data, finding a user by ID. And they're implemented above, right, at the top of the function declaration as a map that creates a relationship between attributes of an object and the implementation of these functions, and we return it so that somebody can use this map to access the functions in here, right? So the data is not publicly available; it's only available through the access of this API, right? Right now, it's iterating over this array that is locally hosted right here in the JavaScript on the client. In the next assignment, we're going to move this to the server side, right? This is not the proper place for the data, right? The data, all this data should live on the server side, actually on the database, right? And the data, this is where but we don't have that just yet. We're slowly moving towards the server, the database, right? And we'll do that in the next assignment. But for now, this is a good place to put it. Nobody else can access this, only through the API. Okay. Right now, also, these functions are synchronous functions. Meaning the controller, notice that they're making a call. They are invoking the data through a user service, and these calls, as you would expect, they are synchronous calls, meaning this function blocks right here, waiting for this function to come back. Following just normal execution of code, right? What you would expect, right? You go into that function, and we don't continue onto the next line until this function returns. Yes. That will change drastically in the next assignment. Right now, this is synchronous. It blocks like you would expect. Since this is a single-threaded environment, there's only one thread, one JavaScript thread in the interpreter in the client, and so the thread walks and goes into this function, executes it, and once it's done, either through one of these returns, it comes back with either a login user being either null, right, or an actual user that matches the username and password, right? Next week, these will become asynchronous functions, right? Right now, we can take the luxury of being synchronous functions because we are all executing in the same browser, right, in the same process, right? Next week, we're going to move this logic of finding things. We're going to move it to the server, right? So these are going to be two processes talking to one another through HTTP, right? So we won't have the luxury of using single-threaded synchronous communication, right? It'll need to be asynchronous, right? And that we'll cover next week. And that will be assignment 4. Assignment 4 will walk you through that. Nevertheless, the API will stay the same. It will be the same exact API, finding users by credentials. Anyway, finding a user by credentials is being used by login to find a user by username and password. If the user is not null, it navigates to the profile, and it passes as an argument the ID of the user that was found. Yes? Otherwise, it notifies the UI that there was an error. So if we do here Bob and Bob, right, it navigates to the profile page. And I believe this is where we left off last Friday. So what we want to be able to do here is that the profile page has in the URL everything it needs to be able to render this page fully, right? It is encoded in the URL. What do we want to show here, right? Presumably, it's the profile for user 234. Okay, so the profile should be able to extract, parse the 234 out of the URL, right, and go fetch this information from the server or the database, right, the profile information for that user. So let's do that in the controller for the profile. There it is. When the profile executes, when this profile function is it's instantiated, this is what it does, right? It comes in, again uses declares a view model, right, to be able to talk to its templates. It parses from the URL. From the URL, it's going to parse this ID using route params, right? Route params is part of the routing API in the ng route, okay, that we loaded in as a module dependency, and it's part of those all that API that all starts with $route, okay. Earlier we used route provider to configure the navigation, right? For the login, the registration, the profile, all the navigation. And here's where we configure the fact that these URLs has this particular pattern, right? It starts with profile followed by something, okay? And that something, we are calling it UID, right? So route provider is configuring a listener for the URL, listening for this pattern. And when it finds it, right, it knows that it needs to feed this HTML, right, load this HTML and inject it into the ng view. Also, it knows that it needs to load this controller, right, this controller right here. And also, if it matches that pattern, it's going to parse that text, whatever it is going to bind it to a variable called UID, right, and it's going to make it available to anybody who uses the route params. Is going to be able to retrieve that map of parameters on the URL, and you can retrieve it using this either as an array, because it's like a map. So you could use the UID, the name of the parameter, as an index into that map, right? And you can retrieve the actual value. So UID in this case is the ID that we mapped here, 234, and if we inspect, it looks like we're using that user ID to retrieve that user by ID, and then once we have the user, we display it on the console. So let's look at the console, and indeed we have that user. There it is, Bob, right? Bob Marley. If the ID would have been instead 123, right, then we would have gotten Alice. See that? Right, so we are successfully retrieving that user, or 345, right? It fetches Charlie Garcia or Jan Nunzi. Make sense? Everybody okay? All right. All right. So now that we have the user, we're going to bind it. We're going to send it over to the view for rendering. We're going to say vm.user equals user, right? And what we've done here is we've bound that user object now to the model that was going to be used by the view, right? So if we go back to the view, we should be able to retrieve this user from the current controller's instance, right? The controller instance was configured to be referenceable from the template using this model variable, right? So from within the template, we're going to be able to refer to the controllers using the model variable. So let's go to the profile. Let's go to the profile, and here we have the first name, the last name, and whatnot. Right? We have all these input fields that currently are not bound to anything in the controller. First of all, let's make this a little bit easier to read. Right? Adding these vertical spacing, vertical new lines, so that we can understand all the attributes. So for the first name, we want to bind it. We want to bind it to the first name of the object that is coming back. Yes, right? And and we can find that according to the controller. We can find that in a variable called user, right, bound to the controller instance. So we should be able to say that this first name can be bound to the ng model. Will be according to the config. The controller is called model, so it's in the model, and the attribute is first name. First name, right? So that if we refresh this, it doesn't work. What? Oh, thank you. Yes. Just checking to see if you were listening. There it is. So there's Jose, right? Let's bind the other ones. Let's bind all the other ones. So let's bind last name. So this is last. Okay, and let's refresh. There it is, Janunze. Email. I don't believe we have an email. Do we have an email? We don't have an email. Nevertheless, I'm going to bind it anyway. So this would be email, if there were an email. You know, always making the code a little bit easier to read. This would be the username, so this would be username, not the password. There it is, Janunzi. Everybody okay? Right. So, and if we would want to update it, then in who's responsible for receiving this update event? If I click on it, the controller for this view, right? That controller is responsible for. So if we go to the controller, we can start binding event handlers, right, for this update. So we could say from the view, we could say, so this button, if I ever click on this update, I would want to handle it. The controller should handle this, right? So ng-click model.update, and I would pass as an argument model.user, right, which is the object that is bound to all the input fields, right? Yeah, let's make this a little bit readable. And the href, I don't need it anymore, right? Because I'm not going to just blindly navigate to that page. Instead, it's going to be handled by the controller. Okay, so the controller needs an event handler of update. So let's do that. The event handler is going to declare here on the VM update a function. Update that's going to receive as an object the new user. Okay, actually it doesn't need a name. And what would it do? What would the update function do? Is the controller responsible for updating the data? Service, right? The service, only the service should be responsible for updating the data, creating data, removing data, doing anything with data. The controller knows who to delegate it to, right? The controller is kind of like a traffic cop, right? Receiving events from everywhere, right? And then dishing out who's responsible for these things, right? It is the controller. It knows how to convert requests into action, but it doesn't actually do the action, right? The actions are delegated to folks that are specifically responsible for that. So let's use the user service. So the user service, presumably there would be an update user, and it would pass the ID of the user that we're trying to update, right? And the new user information, right? Correct? Yes.
On line 13, are they getting a reference to the user or are they getting a copy of it?
Reference.
So is it not a two-way binding? So if the user actually changes on the form, is he not actually changing the one that is binding?
The
The model is a two-way binding.
yes, it is.
And we are still passing.
Well, let's try it out. Let's try it out. How can we fetch the reference? We can't find the reference because we would need to retrieve all the users, right? See that? It's all inside of the user service, so we don't have access to it. It's inside of the user service, so we cannot manipulate it.
Can we write a...
We could, I guess we could get like a find all users and have an object like that. So let's do that. Let's go to user service, and have here. Let's see, how could we do this? Oh, we could bind it here. We could say users colon users. How's that? And we could bind, we could say vm.users equal user service dot users. Let's try that, right? And from the profile, we could display all the users right here, model.users. Did that work? Let's see if that works. Okay, we have all the users there. Right, see that? We got all the users. And there's Januzzi. And so let's see. Let's do an experiment. So there's Jose. So let's modify. Yes, it is. See that? Right? We have a reference to that object, right? And there's a two-way binding if this is modified here. So what we could do, instead of passing this information, find user by ID, right? What we could do is clone this object, right? So before we bind it to the view, right? So that we can send the view a copy of the object, so that the view doesn't actually manipulate the original object in the data model, right? So to do that, we have a function called Angular copy. Angular copy will make a copy of the object, right? A deep copy, right? So if you have an object that contains other objects that contain other objects, right? It will do a deep copy of the object and it will be make available to you. So this VM user is now a copy of the original object. It is not the object. Okay. So let's refresh this so that notice that now they are independent of each other. Right, they're no longer available from one another. Actually, instead of doing it here, right, perhaps a better place to do this, would be at the service itself. The service itself, when it returns the user, it doesn't return the actual user, but it returns a copy of the user. Right, so you never actually have access to the data. Right, this will go away. Will be mute since the data won't live on the client anyway. Right. All this data will be on the server, and the server will only ever be able to send us a copy anyway, right? So all this issues will go away when we go to the server. Nevertheless, it's a very good point So let's copy this, and here as well. Copy. So if we refresh, yeah, so they're completely hidden from the controller. Very good, excellent question. Let's remove this user from here, and let's remove it from the template as well. Where are you? Here. Okay. So we don't have that anymore. Okay, let's go back. So I'd like to be able to update this, right? So let's the controller would receive an event right here, and presumably the service would be responsible for implementing the updating of the service of the user, and so the service would need to implement this API, right? So let's go to the service, and let's declare it right here, and implement it in a function down below. That's going to receive a user ID and is going to receive the new user. So this is going to iterate looking for this user, and if it finds a user, then it's going to manipulate that user. So it'll be user sub u dot username. I mean first name equal new user dot first name, and just copy, not necessarily everything, presumably only the things that you want to be able to update. Maybe you don't want them to be able to update their username, for instance, right? And perhaps password. It depends if you want to be able to let them change it from here, or perhaps a different mechanism. Okay, and I think that's it. Wait, did I do this right? User ID. Oh, it's equal to user ID. User da 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 da. Okay, user blah 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 blah. All right. So if it doesn't find it, I'm going to return null. If it does find it, then I am going to return. Let's see. What should I return? We can return the user that we found, so that the update user in the controller, when it receives the user here, right? If it's null, if user is null, then we can provide an error message saying something like VM error, unable to update user, or if it's not null, then we can say VM message user successfully updated. Okay, and on the profile we can add an alert here, div class alert, and what were the colors? I forget. Alert. Oh, there they are. So danger, and we'll display this only if the model dot error, right? And we'll give the error here, model dot error, or if it's everything's good, we'll do a success. It's green if there's a message. Message, is that what I called it? I forget. I think so, right? So that if I come back here and I update this, and I spell my last name correctly, and say update, it says user successfully updated, right? Or if it's a bogus user, right? There is no user, and I do an update, it says user unable to update the user. Make sense? All right. All right. So let's keep going. So everybody understands, right? All access, all manipulation of the data needs to happen within the service. Right? We'll keep working on this idea when we get to the server side, right? Which we're going to replace all these for loops and whatnot. We're going to move them to the server side, right? All this data, this array is going to be moved to the server side, and eventually we're going to get rid of the data itself, right? All this data should live on the database, right? And that will be the fifth assignment. All right. Any questions? Yes.
Once you click that update, just the actual data here was updated to the service.
Yes.
How did the form input also get updated?
The input.
That you were seeing.
So we didn't. So it was just updated because I changed it on the field because I typed it, right? Right. So it's only bound to the copy of the controller, right? So it's not bound to. It's only for display purposes, right? If I don't actually update it and I refresh, it just goes back to its original value, right? If I do update it, Alice Wonderland, and I update it, it was updated. If I refresh, notice that it didn't work. Wait, what? Why didn't it work? Oh, refresh, obviously. If you refresh, everything resets, right? Okay, another way of testing it, if I do a Wonderland and I update it, right? And then I log out, and then I go back as Alice and Alice, indeed it was updated, right? Refreshing just resets everything back to, since the data is being stored in the client, that refreshes as well. Yeah, we have no session here, right? We have no managing of sessions until we get to the server side. All right, so let's keep going. I believe an additional button here allowed us to navigate to the websites, right? So let's go to the controller, and I'm sorry, the template for the profile, and let's add an additional hyperlink here that would allow us to navigate to the profile UID websites or website, all right, for that particular user. So this would be websites, and the class will be that this is a button and button success. So it will look something like this, right? There it is. And let's add block here, btn block. Right, so that if we click on that, we would want to navigate to hash the user's profile and then the website. So presumably this would be the websites of this user, right, that belong to this user. Actually, this is a little bit different from what we did it in the assignment. I think the assignment says user here. Does it? Is that correct? No, so let me fix that. User. So let's go back, refresh. So website. Okay, so I would navigate to user, user ID, and website. The ID, I believe we have the ID, don't we? Right, the ID is up inside of the model, right? Model current user, right? Underscore ID. Right, so if we refresh and we click on it, notice that we have user /123 and then the website, right? Currently, it's not mapped to anything, right? Presumably, it would be mapped to the list of websites. And following our RESTful syntax, right? The interpretation for this URL is that it's all the websites for this particular user, right? If it's a different user, it would be a different set of websites, right? So let's do that. Let's implement this. So let's map it. Let's go back to our configuration file and create a configuration for that. Let me copy this. And so map it to user ID /website. And this would be mapped to views website templates, and this would be website list view client, and there would be a control along with that. We don't have that just yet. I'll do that in a minute. Okay. Let's see this website list. I don't believe that's where we put it. Right now it lives under just websites, right? So let's create another directory here where we're going to put the templates. We're going to put the views on the templates and the controllers in a separate directory. Okay. So let's move our templates under the templates directory. Again, whether you want to go that deep, right, and split it up into even further, that's up to the team. right? Whatever the team decides, it could be that you start off with something flat, right? And perhaps for the prototype, something real quick. But as it becomes more and more complex, it's a good idea to break it up into a hierarchical split of HTML. So let's rename this, and the name would be right here, right? So let's rename this. Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's see if this works. If I refresh, there they are. So these are the websites with the toy websites that we had. Although notice the styling is a little bit off, and I believe it's because exactly this page still thinks it's a standalone full-blown HTML document, and indeed it's not, right? I don't like some of the gestures in the Mac OS. Okay, there it is. So it's a snippet of an HTML, right? So if we reload, there they are. So we get our styling back. All right. So is this responsive? I believe. Okay, yeah. So we get those two columns back if it's big enough. There we go. So are these the websites for this particular user? I believe they're not. I think these are all hard-coded, right? So to retrieve the actual websites, we would need to be able to parse this particular user and retrieve the websites for that particular user, right? Only display the ones that are for that user. So let's work on that a little bit. Let's create the controller for this page. So let's create a website service. Oh no, I'm sorry, the controller. So this would be a website list controller.client.js. So in here we can create the controller. Right. So this would be Angular module web app maker, and we'll declare the controller for this called website list controller, implemented in the same function. And so in here, what we'd like to be able to do is this website list controller needs to go fetch the websites for this particular user, right? And where are we going to fetch data? Always through the service, right? The service allows to encapsulate all data access so that it can be shared amongst controllers, right? Notice that this controller is going to be used in 3 places, right? To be able to list the websites, to be able to create new websites, to be able to edit existing websites, right, or remove websites. 3 different controllers, 3 different templates, right? Even though you split it up into 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, it's the same service, right? Just like we did for the user, right? For the user, we had 2 pages, right? The login page and the profile page. Both of them using different controllers, the login controller and the profile controller. Yes? And they both use the same exact service, right? So it's only split up that way, only for the convenience of the user, right? It's nice that we can split up different tasks that the user wants to do. The user wants to be able to log in. The user wants to be able to register. The user wants to be able to look at their profile. There's 3 distinct use cases that the user is doing, right? So it's split up for convenience, for the user's convenience. But the data is the same data, right? So that's why it's encapsulated in one single service, but it's reusable in all various controllers. Make sense? Same thing for the website. There are at least 3 different use cases, right? I'd like to be able to list all the websites that I have so far. I'd like to be able to edit an existing website. I'd like to be able to create a brand new website. Those are all the use cases. So we split it up into 3 different templates, 3 different controllers, right? Again, for the user's convenience, right? If this were in a human being, we could put everything in one single page, right? And it will be just fine, right? But us humans, we like to think in a hierarchical way. We like to put things in boxes and to deal with complexity. But our AI overlords might not need any of this, right? Everything in a single page would be just fine. Actually, they won't use pages either, right? They'll just use the APIs. So the controller here would want to go fetch the list of websites, right, from a website service. So it would do something such as, first declare VM, then it would say VM websites, right? It would fetch them from website service. Find all websites for who? It would be the websites for the currently logged in user, right? The user we have at the user ID. So we need the user ID, right? So the only place to fetch the user ID is from the config. The user ID will be encoded as part of the URL, so we can fetch that. We can use route params to fetch that. So route params, right? We can say that VM, the user ID, will be fetched from route params dot user ID. There it is, user ID. Notice that I'm using the dot notation now. See that? In the previous controller, in the profile controller, I used the square brackets, right? Here I'm using the dot notation. In JavaScript, is interchangeable, right? Objects, since objects in JavaScript can change over time. You can add new attributes. You can remove attributes. Really, really cool, right? Dynamically. You can treat maps as if they were objects, right, with properties. And so you can use either the bracket notation, which is this one, or the dot notation, like this, right? Yeah, a little weird, the language, but it's really, really cool that you can treat it as if it were an object, right? If it were an actual attribute. This mechanism, using the square brackets, is a little more powerful because the actual index, notice that it's a string. See that? And because it's a string, you can calculate that. You can dynamically generate that string. So you could have any number of attributes added or removed dynamically, right? Which is it's disconcerting and exhilarating at the same time. It's dangerous, but it's very powerful, right? And I guess with power comes responsibility. So we get the user ID. And we want to find all the websites, but not all of them, right? So maybe find all websites for user, right? Something like that, where we can pass in VM the user ID as an argument, and then the service would find the user for that particular. Would find the websites for that particular user. Okay. All right. So this actually doesn't exist. This service doesn't actually exist. The controller, we just created it, but we never declared it in the index page. So let's do that. Let's declare the controller. So let's make a place for all the controllers. So it will be views. Views. What is it? Website, right? Controllers, and then what do we have? Website list control. There it is, right? And for service, we don't have a service for this yet. So let's get started with that. Service will need a service for website. So dot service dot client.js. All right, and it'll look something like this. It'll be inside of an IFI. We'll not Android. We'll load the current module, the web app maker module, and declare a new service called website service, implemented in a constructor of the same name, right? That is going to declare API such as the API that we're expecting here. What was the name of the function that we need? It's this one, right? Find all websites for user implemented in a function of the same name, and it takes as an argument a user ID, right? So presumably it's iterating over an array of websites, right, which we don't have, but we can grab one from the assignment. So in the assignment, I believe I gave you a set of websites that you could use as dummy websites. There they are. So let me grab that. And let's store it right here. We're going to put it... actually, I like what we were doing earlier. Let's declare right inside of the API as opposed to as its own variable. Okay, so we could say websites. Actually, if we put it there, we could anybody who has the API could actually retrieve all the websites, can it? Right? We make it public, right? We make it public. So actually, let's not do that. Let's declare this outside, right here as a variable, as a local variable. And so the only way to retrieve any of this data is through the API, right? Right. So here we would say something like we're going to iterate over the in the websites, right? Websites. So if websites sub w dot let's see, developer ID, right? Developer ID is equal to the user ID, right? Then what? Then we would like to retrieve all those websites whose developer ID, right? We want to group them all together and then send them back as one single collection, right? So let's build here a collection of local websites as an empty array, and as we find those websites, we're going to push them into this array, right? And then send them back. So something like sites.push. We want to push the website we just found of that user, and let's see, if website yada yada yada. So it's iterating, and at the end we're just going to return the sites, and the sites will either be empty, an empty array, or it'll be an arrays of websites in them. Yes. All right, awesome. So let's see. In the so let's go back to the index. We created this. Let's declare it here as a new directive. I mean service, right? So it'd be services under, what is it? Website. Or is that where I put it? Yeah, exactly. All right. Okay, so are we closer? Let's see. Let's go back to here and refresh. What did the controller do? Source. We have the controller for this. List controller, there it is. Did it go and fetch them? Let's see. Let's refresh. It's not loading it. Why is it not loading it? Oh, we never tied the controller to the template, right? So let's go back to the config, and yeah, so here's a template, but we never said that the controller is website controller. No, what was it? Website? What did I call it? Website list controller. And there it is, and the template is going to refer to this as the model. Okay, let's try that. Do it again. All right, so it's coming in here. Let's step through this. It comes in here. Let's put the user ID is 123. Very good. And we do have a couple of there they are, right? A couple of them. So if we continue, let's look at the websites. Indeed, there's two objects. We found those two websites, and we're going to say continue. And presumably we got those back in the controller. And what is the controller doing? The controller is saying VM websites, And is that what we're using in the template? Let's see, the template, what is the template doing? The template is just iterating. Okay, it's not even using ng repeat, right? So it's not even iterating over any of this, right? So let's fix that. Let's fix that. So instead of being this hard-coded list, we're going to ng repeat over the website. So website in model.websites, websites, right? And now that we have the website, we can do say website. Was it name? Was it name? I forget. Let me see. All right, so name, right? So name. There we go. Name. Created. I don't have it created, right? So I'm just gonna do something like a new date. No, actually, let's do that. Let's change that in the model. Let's change that in the model. Let's go into service. Let's go into service. There it is. So let's add here created, and let's put here a date, a new date object. And let's copy that on all these. Okay, so actually we do have a created instance in there, right? So that in the templates we can say website.created, right? And who created it? I guess we could say website.developer ID, maybe the ID. Okay. Okay, so let's refresh that. Let's continue. And we have, let's see, what do we have? There we go. So we get the owner. We have the ID of the owner. We have the last modified. Notice that it's a string. Ideally, we would want to. This is a raw string, right? Of a raw data object. We can filter that in Angular. There's quite a few filters that are pieces of code that you can write in JavaScript that can receive data and then manipulate it, right? Transform it, and then return the transformed object. And they can participate in these kinds of expressions, these pipes, right, where we are piping data to a filter. The filter manipulates the data and then spits it back to us in a transformed way. There's Angular out of the box implements all sorts of filters. One of them is the date filter, which takes as argument a date object, right, like this, right? That's a string representation of a date object, and then it returns a default format, right? In this case, it's a nice formatted, abbreviated date format. You can change the format and whatnot, and you can write your own filters. So you could say JGA -date. It's my date, right? Any which way you wanna. But we'll look at filters a little later. But now we're using one of their defaults. All right. Okay. So if before we took a look at how to update using the web service. In this case, let's say we want to create a new one, right? So we click on this plus. We'd like to navigate to a website new. So let's do that. So website new. So that the cog, where's the cog? Right now it's hard-coded to go to website edit, right? Instead, we might want to go somewhere else. We might want to say that I want to go to user, the user ID, right? Do we have the user ID somewhere in the controller? We do, didn't I? There it is, VM user ID, right? So we have it. So it's in the model.userid. Website. And then since this is a new website that we're creating, we're going to go say new. Right? As opposed to if I had an actual website, is this a cog or? Oh, sorry, this is a cog. So the cog should actually have the ID of the current website that I want to edit, right? So this would be website.id, right? So that's good. Right, so notice if I refresh and I hover over the cogs, notice that I have the URL that would navigate right to that particular user, and then the website, that particular website, right? And presumably, I would navigate to a website edit page, right? That would, again, use the service to go fetch the website, populate the form, right? And would allow me to update it in place. Yes. But we did that. We did that in the profile. We did that in the profile. So I'm not going to do it for the website. I just wanted to show you about adding a new entity, right? A new instance. So let me go back to plus. Where's the plus here? Plus. Here it is. Plus. Right now it's navigating to website new, right? So let's not do that. Instead, let's navigate to this route. And it'll say the user ID, the website /new, right? And something that I need to point out, notice that the URL that is going to be configured here is going to use here an ID, right? Let me show you in the config. Right, so let me copy this. So let me copy that. Actually, I think I have it in the config, don't I? Where's the config? There it is. So it'll look something like this. So let me copy that. So we'll have website /:UID. I mean website ID. What's that going to do? It's going to want to go in the edit, right? This wants to go to the edit. Yes. And there will be a website edit controller. Yes. And there will be a separate website new. And that's going to want to go in website new view, and this will be website new controller. Correct? Right? But notice the problem that we're going to run into. See this pattern over here? This pattern is broader, is more general than this one. This is more specific. You see that? And what's going to happen is that if I type this pattern into the URL, into the browser, it's going to go here because new matches this pattern right here. See that? Right, so it's going to want to always go to website edit, even if I type new. Right, it's never going to want to go into website new. Right? So to fix that, we're going to need to declare them in a particular order. Right? So let's review. So let's add these. Not the controllers, not yet, because I don't have a controller, and this is going to break. So let me comment those out right now. Let me comment those out. Right. So just to illustrate, let me rename these guys. So this will be refactor, rename. So this will be website edit, and this will be a view client, and this one too. It'll be rename new view client. Yes, and also let me remove these guys here, like that, and I'll do that for the edit as well. Okay, so notice if I click on this, it goes to 678. See that? Let me go back. So that's the editor, right? So we're going to the editor where we have some hard-coded. We have presumably the website we want to edit, and the plus. Oh, the plus is here. Notice that it's still going to the editor. See that? This is the editor, not the new one, not new. Right? So if the reason is that the controller, the config, it's always going to go in this route. It's always going through this route. Right? It never sees this one because new is just a subset of :WID. So what we need to do is to change the order of this, declare this higher, so that when it runs through all the parameters, all the patterns, it will first hit this one if it finds new, right? If it finds something other than new, right, then it'll hit this one. Make sense? All right, so let's go back. Let's refresh. Oops, I broke something. Ah! What did I break? Oh. Okay, there it is. So if I go to edit, that's fine. That works the way we expected. If we go to plus, notice that it's a completely different one, right? For the new. Everybody okay? Make sense? All right. All right. So let's focus on this page. So the left-hand side is what? It's listing all the websites for this user, right? So we need to make that dynamic, and it should look like very much like this one, right? But this one will allow me to create brand new ones. Okay, so let's do the left-hand side first. Where's the template for the edit? Right now, it's just a hard-coded list, right? So just a long hard-coded list of just lots and lots of websites. Yes. No, not edit. Sorry, not edit. New. Where's new? This one. Yeah, there it is. Not such a long list. Okay. So this is going to look very, very much like the website list templates, right? So let's copy that. Website list template. There it is. And it's basically just this list over here, right? This long list, which is going to iterate. So let's do that here. Let's remove the hard-coded content. There it is. So let's remove that. And this list group item is going to want to iterate, right? It's going to say, I'm going to iterate just the same thing we did for the previous page. We're going to iterate over website and model.websites. Websites, right? And we're going to go fetch them just the same way we fetched them earlier, right? Using the service. Right, and here we're going to put the website name, and that's it, right? And what's this going to do? This is the cog for editing. That means that this is going to be a hyperlink, right? And it's going to want to go where? It's going to want to go to /user / model.user_ID. Presumably we have that. /website / for the editing, it would be the current website ._ID. Okay, and that should navigate us to the editor for that particular website. Very good. All right, so let's try that. Let's go to the controller. I don't believe we have a controller yet for this, right? Let's create a controller. So it will be, I'm a little lazy, so I'm going to copy website list controller, right? And I'm going to rename it. I'm going to say website new controller. Website new, there it is. Okay, so we are getting the user ID, very good. We are getting the websites, so we're almost done, right? So let's rename this. So this would be website new, implemented in a constructor of the same name. It's using the wrap parameters to fetch the user ID like before. It's using that the website find all websites for you. That's to fill in the left-hand side, right, of this UI, right? Let's see, what else do we need? All right, so we can try it out. We can declare it in the index page. Right, so this will be very similar to this, but I'm going to change this to new. Right, and what else? We need to configure the templates to use that controller. There it is. We had commented out. Let's uncomment it. There we go. Let's refresh, and there they are. Notice that on the left-hand side, right? On the left-hand side, we have the website for this particular user, right? Not this hard-coded. So if we navigate back, so you notice that as I click on plus, right? Notice that the left-hand side looks like it shrinks, right? Adding on the right-hand side this new edit, this new form, right? But the content is the same. See that? Which is exactly what we're looking for. Excellent. And the navigation, the editing of these still go to, oh well, yeah, we never worked on that, right? We need to fix the edit part of this, but I'll leave that for you to complete. All right, so let's focus on adding new content, right? So let's go to the controller, so the website new, and we would need an event handler. So we'd say VM dot. Presumably, we want to be able to click on the create button or maybe like an OK button up here, and it would create the new website, right? And then navigate back to the list of websites. Yes. So if we need an event handler, we'll call it maybe create website. Declare in a function that takes as argument the new website object. That would use the website service to actually implement this, right? So website dot create website, right, and pass the website as an object. Yes? Once it's done, it wants to navigate back to the list of websites. We'll do that a little later. Okay. All right. All right. This is getting messy, right? So remember that we had talked about that you should follow a pattern, right? Even when you're creating these controllers. For instance, we had said that that instead of implementing event handlers up here, right, that you should declare them at the top, but implement it down below, right? So let's do that. Let's fix our messy code. There we go. That's a little better. Also here, this is code. That's code that executes when the code initially loads, right? So let's tag it appropriately, right? Let's put it inside of an init function so that we know explicitly what we're doing when we are loading, right? Okay? Right, it doesn't change the logic, but it makes it just that little bit easier to read and to follow. All right. So we're the same, right? We have the same exactly. Okay. All right. So let's implement this create website down here. So that's going to be invoked by the new templates when we click on the create button. So here's a create button. The create button right now is hard-coded to navigate to the website list. Let's remove that. We don't want to navigate anywhere. Instead, we want to notify the controller that our intention is to create a new website. So we're going to have an ng-click that is going to say model.create website. And it's going to pass along the website object locally, website object. That is going to be tied to these input fields over here, right? So this input field is going to have an ng model. This is going to be the website name, right? And this text area is going to be bound to the website description. Okay. Right. So that when we pass the website object, it's going to be receive right here, and then we're going to pass it along to the website service. All right, so let's list that. Let's do that. So let's implement the create website. So to do that, let's go to the service for the website, and it's right here. Right, so we're going to implement here a function called create website. Remember, the service is the one responsible for it's the keeper of the data. Okay. Now this website, really this website is notice that it's always within the context of a user, right? Within the context of a user. So this create website should take also as argument the ID of the user who's creating this, right? So let's add that. So user ID as an argument. So that means that in the create object, we're going to pass along the user ID, which we have stored here. Right? So let's pass it along. Okay. Let's see what else. I think that's it. So the implementation is trivial here. Oops, here it's a colon. The implementation is to take the current local website instance and just push this new website. Right? Push this new website object. Okay. All right. So let's try it out. If we re-render this and we create a new the LinkedIn website, so new website test, and we create it, we don't know if it actually worked. But if we navigate back to the we don't have a way for it to check to see if it actually worked. I can't refresh. If I refresh, it'll just How about if I say plus? No, that doesn't work. How do we know if it works? I know. What we could do is that after we create the website, we could fetch the websites again. I fetch the website again for that user, right? And re-update the template on the left-hand side. So let's try that again. Create. Oh, it looks like this didn't work. Let's step through this. So let's see. Let's look at source. All right. So that's the list controller. Oh, are we in the right place? No, I don't want that one. Let's see. Are we even getting here? Create. Okay, so it looks like we are getting there. Are we passing a website object? There's a website object. We pushed user ID. We never used the user ID, so we need to fix that. So I pushed it. So let's keep stepping through this. Let's see. Okay, we're back at the controller. We're back at the controller. Let's fetch all the websites. So let's step in. Let's see. Oh, okay. So yeah. So if we look at the websites, we do have one more website at the bottom. See that with the description and the name, but it doesn't have the user ID. That's why it's never retrieving the website for this user, right? Because it doesn't know that the developer is that ID. So let's fix that. Right. So when it creates it. When we create it in the service, what we're going to do before we push, we're going to say that website dot developer ID is equal to the user ID. There we go. All right. So let's do that. Let's refresh. Let's refresh and let's create a dummy website and step through. There it is. It's appearing on the left-hand side. Everybody good? All right. And if we go back to the list of websites, still there, right? So if we go back and we can create any number of websites. But it's not supposed to stay here, right? It's not supposed to stay here. It's supposed to navigate back to the list of websites. So let's navigate back, and to do that in the controller, we'll need $location. Okay. So that we can, since we're going to navigate away from this page, I'm not going to bother updating the list of websites on the left-hand side, right? Because nobody's, we're just navigating away from this page, right? So we're going to go to URL, back to where? Back to user, back to the user ID. It's in user ID, I believe. Back to /website, and that's it, right? That's the list of all the websites for this user, right? So let's refresh. Let's create a dummy. Let's do create. Remove that and say OK, and notice that it's there, so I can create new ones. Create, and there they go. Everybody okay? Makes sense. Removing, I think it's easy as well, right? I would go to the edit. I would iterate over the lists of websites, and in the edit page, right? In the edit page, do we have the edit page? Did we do that? Yeah, the edit page has a delete, right? The delete would iterate over all the websites, looking for that website. When it finds it, it removes it. So I'm not going to do that, right? But again, it would be in the website service, right? There would be a function here that says something like delete website, right? That would iterate. It would just iterate over this, right? Looking for the websites to remove. It would take as argument the ID of the website. So it would be something like function delete website. It takes the website ID, and as it iterates over the websites, right? If it finds it, if the websites underscore ID is equal to the website ID, it's going to remove that website, right? And it could say the way you remove something from an array is sites It would be websites, splice. Splice can be used for both. It can be used for inserting new elements in an array at a particular position. You can put them in anywhere you want. But it can also be used for removing an element on the array. And if you want to remove something from an array, you need to tell it where, what position, and the position is W, right? W is the index, right? It's iterating over the array, right? And when it finds it, if you want to remove something, you need to tell it how many you want to remove, right? In this case, we just want to remove that one website, right, from the array. So it's just one. If you put this as 0, the splice function will be interpreted as an insert instead. Right? You don't want to remove anything, so you want to insert at position W, but then you would have to provide an array of things that you want to insert. Okay, whatever you want to insert. So in this case, we're using the syntax of removing a single element at that position. Okay, actually, might as well do it. Let's do this one real quick. So in the editor, right? So we're in the edit, which right now it's hard coded, right? If we go to tic-tac-toe, notice it says Facebook. If we click on checkers, it still says Facebook, right? So this is hard coded, right? Let's write the controller for this real quick. So the controller, I'm lazy, so I'm going to copy that controller. And so let's go here. View website, and for the edit, right, I'm gonna copy the new, and this will be website edit controller, and the edit controller, a lot of it is going to be the same. We are going to fetch the user ID. We're not going to have create website. We're not creating new websites, right? So we're not going to have this. So we're not creating a new website. We are deleting a website, so let's create an event handler for that, right? So delete website. So let's create an event handler for that. Delete website. Delete website, and the argument should be its website ID, and it should use what? The new delete method we just created in the service, right? I think we called it delete website. That takes as argument the website ID, and after removing it, we can navigate back to the list of websites, right? Let's see. Where is this website ID? Where would it get that? Well, we are on the controller is called website edit, right? So this is called wrong, right? Edit controller. Right, so presumably we're getting the ID right here. Now we're editing that one right there, 678, right? And according to our configuration, we call that parameter in the editing right here. Here's the edit, right? We call it WID, right? So we should be able to retrieve it from within the controller, from the map, WID. There it is, website ID, right? And in a WID, there it is, right? So we have it right there. So we pass around this argument. We can pass it around. Actually, this delete website, website ID. Does that make sense? We already are at that website that we want to remove, right? So we don't need it as a parameter. We already know that we are removing this website, the one we're currently editing, right? So yes, it makes no sense to pass an argument. From the service point of view, they don't know what page you're looking at, right? And they should never know. That's irrelevant to the service, right? The service is just manipulating data. So we are going to need to pass arguments here. So vm.website ID, there it is, right? And then navigate to the list of websites. Okay. So let's do that. Let's implement the delete in the template so that we can call this delete website from the template. So in the templates. Where is it? It's in the edit template. Where are we? Where is it? I don't see it. Website. I guess we have the controller. We don't have the template open. Let's see the template. Why are you closing this all the time? view, website, template, edit. So here's the edit, so it's this delete button down here, right? So delete button, where are you? Delete button. Where? Why did I add all this here? Oh, maybe I was testing the scrolling. Maybe that's what I was doing. I was testing the scrolling. So this delete button, I believe it's this delete button right here. I don't want to navigate anywhere. I want to tell the controller that we just clicked on delete website, and that's a function that is declared on the controller instance, so it's in the model, and we're going to call delete website. So is it configured for this template? It is. We had commented out. All right. So if I refresh, oops, it's complaining about something. Let's see. It says that it can't find the controller. So probably forgot to declare in the index page, right? So let's go to the index page and declare it. There it is. So let's copy this, and this will be website edit controller. So let's refresh. Okay, it's happy. So which one are we removing? Let's see. Let's go back. So let's remove tic-tac-toe. So let's go here. Delete. Notice that we went back to the list, and notice that tic-tac-toe is no longer there. Right? We removed it from the editor. Right? If we go to edit, notice that it's is it here? Okay, the left-hand side is just hard-coded, right? We can fix that real quick in the editor, right, by iterating over the websites. Instead of having this hard-coded list of websites, right, we can remove all that, right, and we can change this to be a ng repeat that iterates over the websites in the model.websites, right, and this will be the website dot name, and this will be the cog. There it is. So we, did I remove it? Oh, refresh. Thank you. All right, so we remove this one, and when we go back, oh, update. Oh, not update. I'm sorry. Delete. Okay, there we go. And we say edit. It's no longer there, right? Obviously, this is not. This is supposed to read from the service, right? So in the controller, not only in the controller for the edit, not only are we reading all the websites to populate the left-hand side, right? We also need to read the one website that we're editing, right? So we need to say vm.website, the website that we are displaying on the right-hand side. So this populates the left-hand side, and this is going to populate the right-hand side, right? So we're going to fetch the website. Find website by ID, and we're going to pass the website ID that we read from the URL, and we're going to bind it to the website object, so that on the right-hand side, the form, the input field, right, here's the input field, we can bind this input field, bind this to model.website.name, right, and bind the text area here, ng model, oops, ng model is going to be mapped to model.website.description. Okay, so if we refresh, oops, something happened. Find website by ID. We don't have website by ID, so let's go implement that in the service. In the service, where is the service? There it is. So we'll have a find website by ID implemented in a function of the same name, which just takes the website the website ID and iterates over the website until it finds it. Let me copy that for loop. That's iterating over the website ID. And when it finds it, it's going to return a copy, right? So angular.copy websites sub w, right? Otherwise, if it doesn't find it, it's going to return null. So that right there it is. There's tic-tac-toe. There's tic-tac-toe for editing. Or if I want to go back and edit checkers, there's checkers, right? Or edit tic-tac-toe. And I can remove this and go back to checkers to the list. And so left-hand side is being updated correctly, and the right-hand side is being updated correctly. Make sense? All right. All right. So there's a couple more that I'm not going to work on. There's update should be here as well. Also, notice that when we created the website, right? If I go back to plus and edit it and add it, right, and we create a new one, it is indeed being created, but notice that I can't edit it, right? And the reason that I can't edit it is because there is no ID. Yeah, there is no ID. When we created it, right, typically in the database is going to create the ID, right, when it inserts it as a record into the database. So we have to simulate that. Right? We have to simulate it. One way that we can simulate it is that when we're creating the website here, we can populate the ID with a bogus ID, right? A unique bogus ID, right? One way that we could do that is to create a new date instance, right? That creates a new date instance, and as far as I know, time progresses forward. And so if you retrieve the milliseconds for that date, it will always be an ever-increasing number, okay, according to the second law of thermodynamics. So if I say get time, right, that's going to be the milliseconds that occurred since January 1st, 1970 something. So that if I refresh this and I create a brand new one, now I can click on the edit and notice here's the unique identifier, right? Those milliseconds. When we get to the database, these will be created by MongoDB. We'll create these unique identifiers, right? Right now we're just using toy IDs. All right. Everybody okay? All right. All right, so let's move on. Once we're looking at a particular website, we would want to be able to click on that name and navigate to the list of pages. Yes, and the list of pages is very, very similar to the list of websites. So I'm not going to work on that. The editing, the creation of the pages is almost identical to the websites, right? So the only complexity will be that this URL will just get a little longer, right? Instead of just user website, it'll add /page/ the number of a page, right? So you'll need to parse those from the URL, so it'll be a little bit more complex there. And eventually you'll get to widgets, right? The list of all the widgets in a particular page. Yes? Right, so since I'm going to skip page, I want to skip right into widgets. So let me copy that URL. So I'm going to configure that in the config. And I'm just going to make here a comment, say, now do all the page routes using websites as an example. So instead, I'm going to grab one of these and I want to list all the widgets, right? So I'm going to grab just any one of these and I'm just going to paste it right here. All right, and so this is going to be, the URL is going to look something like this. So I'm going to paste it in here. It'll be website, some user ID, some user ID, right? Website, some website ID, some page. I'm going to hard code the ID of the page because I don't have a page, right? So I'm just going to hard code something, and then widget, okay? And that's going to want to go where? Views widget, right? Templates, widget list, and there'll be a controller along with that. So that template, I believe right now, lives on where? Lives inside of widget. Okay, let's create directories for these. So this will be templates, and this will live in there. And the name, let's refactor the name. Let me copy it from here. Refactor, rename. There it is. And let's convert it into a single page page. Let's remove this from the top and remove this from the bottom. So that if I go to website and then I go to page 123, what do I call it? I'm just going to say colon PID. I don't want to have to remember that it's 123. And then slash widget. Okay, there it is, right? We are in the list of widgets for that particular page. Yes? Right? So again, these would need to be rendered, right, dynamically. And the way I asked you to do it in the assignment is to is that each one of these is going to be a separate template, right, that you are going to dynamically inject. You're going to dynamically load these, right, using ng include, right? Also, as it's iterating over all these widgets, each widget will be a different type, right? Some of them would be header widgets, some of them would be image widgets, some of them would be YouTube widgets, some of them would be raw HTML widgets, yes? So we'll have to use different templates, right? We'll have to use different URLs. For that, you're going to need to use ng switch. Ng switch is like what the name suggests, right? It's like a switch case, right? That can choose different templates depending on some variable, right? Depending on and we're going to use the type of the widget, right? If it's a YouTube type widget, it'll use the YouTube template. If it's an image widget, then it'll use the image template. Make sense? So let's look at that a little bit. Let's just get started. We don't have enough time, so we have the widget lists, right? And we need a control along with that. And the controller, let's declare the controller first, and we'll say controller. It'll be a widget list controller, and it'll be referred to in the client as the model, right? And let's create that controller. I'm going to copy it from, how about website lists? I'll copy from there. Here's website lists. I'll copy that, and I'll put it under here, a directory called controllers. Let's paste it in there, and I'll call it a widget list controller. There we go. And here, let's use the correct name. It's a widget list controller implemented in a function of the same name, and it's not going to use a website service. It's going to use a widget service. Okay, and it's going to retrieve find all widgets. Okay. Now this name, sometimes it's understood that it's inside, it's within a particular context. Obviously, you're not going to look at all the widgets; it would make no sense, right? It's understood that it's within the context of a particular page, right? So those things we're going to be reading from the URL, like we did earlier. Website ID from the route parameters, right? The website ID. Also, the page ID, probably we're going to have to be reading from the parameter. Right, so this will be page ID. Page ID, I think mapped to the PID. And based on that PID, page ID, we're going to retrieve the widgets for that particular page. Yes? And bind them to the widgets on the on the template so that the template can render this. Yes. So the service would need to declare that list of widgets, which I believe I gave you down here. Page. These are the pages. See, these are the widgets that are going to be declared in the service, right? And along with all these functions that allow you to retrieve and update all these widgets. And we'll do that when we come back on Friday. All right. Thank you.